and now today we're doing copper. I believe the tariff on copper, we're going to make it 50%.
The U.S. president's latest tariff target is a critical mineral found across big parts of this province. BC is Canada's largest producer of copper, but experts say these latest tariff plans might not affect the industry here very much.
We're really looking at developing a mining district here. We know there's more copper in the ground.
Across the windswept plains of British Columbia, the early morning sun glints off a line of trucks crawling toward a deep red ridge. A copper mine so vast it could swallow a city block. The air hums with machinery, the sound of engines and ambition. Workers in orange vests move like ants across a landscape that, for decades, was left untouched. But now, this place, once forgotten, has become the heartbeat of a billion-dollar Canadian gamble. And in Washington, that gamble has left one man completely stunned. When Donald Trump imposed sweeping tariffs on Canadian minerals last year, he framed it as a show of power, an attempt to bring America's industry back home. He spoke to cheering crowds about American mining, about energy dominance, about never again depending on any foreign nation. But what he didn't expect was this: that Canada, instead of breaking, would respond with something so calculated, so bold, it could change the entire balance of North American trade. Because deep in the mountains of British Columbia, Canada just launched a $1 billion copper mega project, a strategic, sovereign move that has left the Trump team reeling. Copper, the metal that makes modern life possible, powering everything from smartphones to electric cars, from defense systems to the renewable energy grid. Without copper, the transition to clean energy simply stops. And in a world racing toward electrification, whoever controls copper controls the future. For years, the United States believed it had the upper hand. American companies dominated supply chains, dictated terms, and relied on cheap imports from allies. But the tariffs, meant to pressure China and Canada alike, have backfired spectacularly. Because Canada didn't just adapt, it evolved. This new mine, located near the northern interior, isn't just another extraction site. It's a statement. A declaration that Canada will no longer be a resource exporter for someone else's gain. The mine's construction brought in over 3,000 jobs. Its supply contracts prioritize Canadian-made machinery, and its ownership, a joint venture between Ottawa, First Nations partners, and private firms, ensures the wealth stays within Canada's borders. It's not just economics, it's sovereignty in action. When the project was announced, Prime Minister Mark Carney stood before a crowd of miners and engineers, his voice calm but firm. "We are not here to respond to tariffs with anger," he said. "We are responding with progress. We are building what the world needs, not what others demand." That line, "what the world needs, not what others demand," echoed across global markets. Within hours, financial analysts from New York to Tokyo began dissecting what this meant. Could Canada, long seen as a quiet resource player, actually turn Trump's trade war into an advantage? The answer, increasingly, appears to be yes. In just a few years, Canada has quietly become one of the most strategic players in the global critical minerals race. While the US and China wage political battles, Ottawa is investing in production, refining, and research, all aimed at controlling the full supply chain. And copper is the cornerstone of that strategy. At a time when global copper demand is projected to double by 2035, the world is facing a supply crunch. Mines in Chile are aging. Peru's output is unstable. African projects are mired in geopolitical risk. And in the United States, environmental delays and local resistance have slowed nearly every major mining proposal. So when Canada announced its billion-dollar investment, the timing couldn't have been more perfect, or more provocative. Because while Washington has been talking about America first, Canada has been quietly building Canada strong. And nowhere is this clearer than in the reaction south of the border. Within hours of the mine's groundbreaking ceremony, U.S. media outlets began airing segments with titles like "Canada's Copper Shock" and "Ottawa Outplays Trump's Tariffs." Behind closed doors, White House trade advisors were reportedly frustrated. What began as a move to punish Canada for trade imbalances had now made the U.S. more dependent on Canadian copper than ever. In fact, as of this year, nearly 48% of the copper used in U.S. electric vehicles and renewable energy projects is sourced from Canada. That's right. The tariffs meant to decouple America from its neighbors have done the opposite. They've made Washington more reliant on the very country Trump tried to squeeze. And this irony isn't lost on the markets. Investors have started calling it the copper turnaround. But beyond economics, there's something deeper at play. A shift in confidence, in identity. In towns like Prince George and Kamloops, where the mine's expansion has created a boom in housing and small businesses, there's a new sense of pride. "We've been told for decades that we're just suppliers," says one worker, wiping sweat from his brow. "Now we're building the future." On our own terms, that sentiment, quiet, firm, and proud, has become the emotional backbone of Canada's new industrial revival. Meanwhile, the political theater continues to unfold. In Ottawa, opposition leader Pierre Poilievre accused the government of playing politics with resources, claiming that the mine's investment came too late to counteract the effects of Trump's tariffs. But Carney's government pushed back hard. They pointed out that the project had been years in the making, a long-term vision of independence, not a reactive stunt. What's fascinating is that this isn't just a trade dispute anymore. It's a clash of worldviews. Trump's vision of energy dominance, built on fossil fuels, nationalism, and control, stands in stark contrast to Canada's vision of resource sovereignty through collaboration, clean energy, and sustainability. In many ways, the $1 billion copper mine represents that philosophical divide made tangible. Because this mine isn't powered by diesel trucks or coal-fired electricity. It's run on a hybrid grid powered by hydroelectric and solar energy. Every ton of copper extracted here has one of the lowest carbon footprints in the world. It's not just producing copper, it's producing credibility. And that credibility has become a form of soft power that Washington can't easily counter. Across Europe, Canada's strategy is being noticed. The European Union has already approached Ottawa to form a long-term supply agreement for green copper, bypassing China and the US entirely. In diplomatic terms, that's seismic. For decades, Canada has lived in the shadow of its southern neighbor. Economically integrated, politically tied, and often treated as an extension of the US market. But this mine, and what it represents, is breaking that pattern. It's not anti-American, it's post-American. And that's precisely what has Trump so stunned. Because this isn't the Canada he remembers, not the polite junior partner, not the quiet neighbor. This is a Canada that's writing its own playbook, and winning. Behind the scenes, Washington's trade offices are reportedly scrambling to renegotiate portions of the North American Mineral Supply Agreement. The US needs copper, and fast. Its infrastructure projects, EV subsidies, and defense contracts depend on it. But Ottawa now has leverage. Real leverage. And for the first time in modern North American history, it's Canada, not the US, holding the cards. Mark Carney, known for his calm composure, seems almost surgical in how he's handled this geopolitical moment. He hasn't gloated. He hasn't mocked Trump. Instead, his tone remains professional, diplomatic, yet firm. In one recent press conference, when asked whether the copper boom was a response to Trump's tariffs, Carney smiled slightly. "We don't build to react," he said. "We build to last." That line has since become the unofficial slogan of Canada's new economic vision. It's also a warning, subtle but unmistakable, that Canada won't be bullied into submission again. Because make no mistake, this is more than a mine. It's a symbol. It represents decades of frustration over trade imbalances, over being seen as a supplier rather than a partner. It's about national dignity as much as it is about economics. And it's resonating deeply within the Canadian public. Polls show that over 70% of Canadians now support stronger domestic control over resource industries, even if it means temporarily straining relations with Washington. The shift is cultural, not just political. Meanwhile, the global copper market is watching nervously. Prices have surged 25% in just 6 months. Mining giants from Australia and Chile are racing to increase production. But few can match Canada's combination of stability, environmental standards, and geographic advantage. It's a reminder that in geopolitics, strength isn't just about muscle. It's about timing and credibility. And in this moment, Canada has both. Yet beneath all the data, speeches, and policy maneuvers, there's something profoundly human unfolding here. In the mining towns, families that once faced layoffs are now talking about college plans, new homes, and the future. Local indigenous communities, often excluded from past resource projects, now hold equity stakes and decision-making power in the mine's governance board. That's not just reform, that's reconciliation in action. And it's giving the project a moral weight that even its critics struggle to deny. Still, the story isn't over. The Trump campaign has reportedly vowed to review all unfair trade advantages if he wins re-election. His rhetoric has grown more combative, accusing Canada of exploiting American weakness. But in reality, the weakness is strategic blindness. An inability to see that in the 21st century, economic power isn't built by isolation, but by adaptation. Canada adapted. The US didn't. And now, the tables have turned. In a time when trade wars rage and alliances fracture, Canada has done something rare. It turned pressure into purpose. What began as a tariff has become a turning point. And while Trump may still boast of dominance, the truth is undeniable. The future of North America's resources now runs through Canadian soil. The world's watching, and this time, it's not the United States leading the charge. It's Canada, calm, determined, and stronger than ever before.